He was just a black boy. At least, that's what the judge saw. 17. Hooded sweatshirt. Eyes straight ahead. Hands clasped in front of him like he'd been taught to stay small. He didn't flinch. Didn't cry. Didn't plead. And that only made Judge Ronald Beck even more convinced. This kid thought he was untouchable. The courtroom was nearly empty that morning. A quiet Thursday. Only a public defender, a court clerk, and 2 board officers near the back. No parents. No press. Just another juvenile delinquent, about to get exactly what he deserved. That's what Judge Beck thought. Until the boy opened his mouth and said 2 words that made the entire room stop breathing. But that moment hadn't come yet. It was still 15 minutes away. Right now, Judge Beck was tapping his gavel, flipping through the file. Marcus Bennett, he said, not looking up. Charged with theft, obstruction, and resisting arrest. The clerk leaned forward. Your Honor, the defendant was caught allegedly breaking into a vehicle belonging to Officer Darrell Green. Beck raised an eyebrow. Green. That name meant something. Not because he was a cop. Because he was one of Beck's golf buddies. This case just got easier. The judge finally looked up. The boy, Marcus, stood motionless. Too still. Beck didn't like that. He leaned back, watching. You've got nothing to say for yourself? Silence. Just the hum of the overhead lights. Beck shook his head. Typical. The public defender cleared his throat. Your Honor, the defendant maintains that he never touched the car. There's no forensic. Save it, Beck interrupted. I've read enough. I've heard enough. He tapped the file. Your client was seen loitering outside Officer Green's home. At night. Wearing dark clothing. He ran when questioned. That's more than enough for me. The public defender tried again. Sir, the boy was jogging. Jogging? Beck laughed, a dry, cutting sound. At 11:48 p.m.? In a hoodie? Near a police officer's home? He leaned forward. I've lived long enough to know what that means. From the back, one of the officers shifted in his seat. Marcus still hadn't moved. His jaw was tight. His eyes calm. Too calm. Beck noticed. And that only made him angrier. These kids, he muttered, loud enough for the whole courtroom to hear. No respect. No remorse. No fathers to teach them right from wrong. The comment hung in the air like smoke. The clerk glanced up, uncomfortable. The public defender opened his mouth, then closed it. But Marcus? He finally spoke. Quiet. Even. Your Honor. Beck raised a brow. Speak. Marcus looked him in the eye. And said, You're dismissed. The room froze. Beck blinked. What did you just say? Marcus took one step forward. From his back pocket, he pulled out a folded paper. Unfolded it. Held it up. The clerk leaned over. Her eyes widened. The public defender stood. Wait, what is that? Marcus answered simply. An order from the State Disciplinary Board. The courtroom stayed silent. Like the air had been sucked out of it. Judge Beck stared at the document in Marcus's hand. He didn't reach for it. Didn't move. His jaw tightened. You think this is a joke? He said, voice lower now. You think you can walk in here, wave some paper, and tell me how to run my courtroom? Marcus didn't flinch. No, sir. I think that paper tells you what you're not allowed to do anymore. Beck's face flushed a deep red. The public defender stepped forward. Your Honor, I think we need to. I don't take orders from juveniles, Beck snapped. And I certainly don't take orders from criminals. Then, finally, the clerk stood. Sir, she said softly, I think we need to read the order. Beck glared. But she walked forward anyway. Marcus handed it to her without a word. She read quickly, eyes scanning faster and faster. Then she looked up. Judge Beck, she said, voice shaking slightly. This is official. It's from the State Judicial Conduct Commission. It's an emergency suspension of authority. Signed this morning. Beck didn't move. The officers at the back straightened. The public defender whispered, "Wait, he's suspended?" Marcus nodded once. "Effective immediately." Beck finally reached out and snatched the paper. He read it. His hands started to tremble. This is political nonsense," he said, voice rising. "This is some activist stunt. It has no bearing on this courtroom." But his voice cracked. And everyone heard it. The clerk turned to the public defender. "Sir, I believe the judge is no longer permitted to preside." Beck slammed the paper down. "This is my courtroom." Marcus stepped forward. "No, sir. Not anymore." The moment cracked. Like a fault line under pressure. Suddenly, the truth started leaking in from every direction. The officer at the back whispered to his partner, "This is real. I heard rumors he was under investigation." The public defender turned to Marcus. How did you get that?" Marcus didn't look away from Beck. "My uncle is a civil rights attorney. I called him after I got arrested. Turns out, this wasn't your first case with false charges. Just your sloppiest." The silence shifted. From shock to something else. Understanding. Disgust. Beck tried to regain control. "That doesn't change the facts of your case. You were still." "I wasn't near the officer's car," Marcus cut in. "I was on the sidewalk. Jogging." "At midnight?" "Yes. I run late. I live 2 blocks away. I've lived there for 8 years. Suspicious behavior," Beck snapped. Marcus pulled out his phone. Press play. A recording came on. "Yo, I'm heading out for a run. Timestamp is 11:30 p.m. Don't wait up." Marcus's voice, clear and calm. Another clip followed. Security cam footage. From a neighbor's doorbell camera. It showed Marcus jogging past a row of houses. Not stopping. Not peeking into windows. Just moving. And in the distance? Flashing lights. Police headlights. Already pulling up. "Officer Green saw a black boy in a hoodie," Marcus said. "And decided that was enough." He looked straight at Beck. "And you did the rest." Beck sat down. Hard. He didn't speak. Didn't blink. The courtroom no longer belonged to him. The clerk stepped forward again. "The commission says we're to halt proceedings until a replacement judge is assigned." The public defender turned to Marcus. "Are you okay?" Marcus nodded. But his eyes stayed locked on Beck. "This wasn't just about me," he said. "It's about everyone he's done this to." Outside the courtroom, the hallway was filling up. Word spreads fast in buildings like that. One in turn. One overheard sentence. One text. Now people were gathering. Watching the doors. And somewhere down that hall, a woman in a gray suit with a state badge was approaching. And she wasn't coming to ask for the robe. She was coming to take it. Beck stood. Slowly. The courtroom quieted again. But something had changed. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked dangerous. "I see what this is," he said, voice low. "You want to make a show of this. You want to humiliate me." He turned toward Marcus. "You think I don't know your type? Cocky. Entitled. Protected." Marcus didn't move. "You think waving a paper makes you smarter than the bench?" Beck stepped forward. "And yet you're standing here, accused of a crime." "Not me," the public defender interjected. "Judge Beck, with all due respect, your authority has been suspended. Continuing to preside." "I don't answer to interns in cheap suits," Beck snapped. He walked back to the bench. Picked up the gavel. The clerk gasped. "Sir, please don't." But he slammed it once hard. "This hearing will proceed." The public defender stood up fully now. "That's illegal. We're stopping this proceeding now. You can step out if you'd like," Beck sneered. "But this courtroom belongs to me." Then he turned to Marcus. "Let's talk about your record." Marcus stiffened. 3 detentions in school. A warning from a corner store 2 years ago. And now this. You want to act innocent, but you walk like a thug. Marcus's lips parted, but no sound came out. Beck leaned in, gavel clenched. People like you never learn until they're behind bars. So I'm going to make sure you. The door opened. And everything stopped. A woman entered. Sharp suit. Calm eyes. Badge gleaming. She didn't speak right away. She didn't need to. The tension shifted again, like wind changing direction. The clerk stepped aside. The woman held up an ID. Lisa Grant. Judicial Oversight Office. Beck's jaw twitched. She walked slowly to the front of the courtroom. Judge Beck, she said evenly, you are no longer authorized to act in any judicial capacity. Continuing this hearing violates state order. Beck scoffed. You're late. No, sir, she replied. You're finished. The officers at the back stood. One walked toward the bench. Sir, I'm going to need you to step down. Beck raised the gavel again, then stopped. His hand was shaking. 20 years. He muttered. The officer nodded. All the more reason to do this right. Beck slowly lowered the gavel. He turned to Lisa Grant. This isn't the end. She didn't blink. You're right. It's just the beginning. As Beck stepped off the bench, the energy in the room snapped like a rubber band. The clerk released a breath. The public defender sat down hard, wiping his brow. Marcus? He didn't move. Not yet. Lisa turned to him. Marcus, right? He nodded once. You did the right thing. He looked past her. At Beck's empty chair. No, he said. The right thing would have been not ending up here at all. Lisa nodded slowly. Then she turned to the room. There will be a full investigation into this judge's past cases. Every one of them. She paused. And if you've ever felt unheard, now is the time to speak. Outside the courtroom, cameras were already waiting. Reporters. Legal reps. Family members of past defendants. Someone was holding up a poster. How many more? Another held a sign. Justice can't wait. But back in the courtroom, Marcus picked up his backpack. He looked at the gavel on the desk. Then turned to the clerk. Can I ask you something? She nodded, surprised. Can I get a copy of the transcript? She blinked. Why? Marcus stared at the bench. Because one day, I'm gonna read it from the other side. Marcus left the courtroom in silence. But the silence didn't follow him. By the time he reached the courthouse steps, the world was waiting. Cameras. Microphones. Voices. Reporters shouted over each other. Marcus, did you plan this? Do you have anything to say to Judge Beck? Are you going to press charges? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. But 2 blocks away, in a quiet corner office above the Civil Rights Building downtown, someone else was watching the live stream. He smiled. Then picked up the phone. Get me the files, he said. All of Beck's rulings. We're going to war. Back at the courthouse, Lisa Grant sat with Marcus and his uncle, Harold Bennett, civil rights attorney, former state prosecutor, and founder of the watchdog group, Eyes on Justice. Lisa looked over the file Marcus had submitted weeks before. It was detailed. Meticulous. Not just about his own arrest, but about 7 others. 7 black teens. Same neighborhood. Same charges. Same judge. All under Beck. All with one common thread, no solid evidence. Harold leaned forward. He wasn't just biased, he said. He was a pattern. He weaponized the bench. Lisa nodded. And he almost got away with it. Marcus looked up. Almost. Later that evening, Beck's face hit the evening news. Not as a judge, but as the subject of a statewide investigation. State judge suspended amid allegations of racial bias, misconduct. Clips rolled of his past cases. One mother crying outside a courtroom. A teenager describing hours in a holding cell for a crime he didn't commit. An expert breaking down how Beck consistently handed out harsher sentences to black defendants. The truth was bleeding out. And it was loud. But there was still one thing no one knew. The reason Marcus had walked in with that document that morning, not a day later, not earlier. It wasn't luck. It was timing. Because 5 months before, Marcus had volunteered to be arrested. Yes. He volunteered. It started when Harold began reviewing Beck's old cases and noticed the pattern. He needed one more example. One undeniable, on record, caught in the act moment. But Beck was too careful. He needed a setup. A trigger. Something Beck couldn't resist. Enter Marcus. Smart. Calm. With a clean record and nerves of steel. He agreed. He jogged near Beck's friend's home. He wore a hoodie. He let them arrest him, but not without recording the moment, documenting the time, and texting his uncle as it happened. He knew Beck wouldn't ask questions. He knew the charges would come fast. And he knew it would be enough. Because the real case wasn't Marcus versus the system. It was the system versus itself. Now, with the gavel silenced and the court exposed, the real work began. Harold filed a class action motion. Lisa expedited the disciplinary process. And Marcus? He testified. Not as a defendant, but as a key witness. The twist wasn't just that Marcus had beaten the charge. It was that he had orchestrated the takedown. He was never just another boy in a hoodie. He was a blueprint. A signal to every other kid who'd been silenced. And while Judge Beck tried to save himself with statements and denials, the court had already moved on. The robes didn't protect him anymore. Not from Marcus. Not from the truth. 1 week later, a citywide forum was held. It wasn't packed with lawyers. It was packed with students. Teenagers. Young men and women in hoodies and sneakers, sitting quietly, listening to Marcus speak from the podium. He held no paper. No badge. Just presence. This system thought it knew me, he said. It thought it could judge me based on how I look. How I run. Where I stand. He paused. But what he didn't know, is that I've been watching it too. 3 weeks later. The courtroom was full this time. Packed. Reporters. Former defendants. Law students. Activists. Clerks. Even a few old judges who'd seen too much and said too little. At the front, Judge Ronald Beck sat in the defendant's seat. Not behind the bench. Not above anyone. Just another man in a cheap suit, trying to hold on to power that had already slipped away. The lead investigator read from the report. Consistent racial disparities in sentencing. Verbal misconduct. Violation of due process. Tampering with judicial neutrality. The words hit like bricks. One by one. By one. Beck didn't flinch. But he didn't fight either. Not anymore. Lisa Grant stood next. With poise. Authority. She looked Beck in the eye. This isn't just about one case, she said. It's about an entire community that was taught to fear the system instead of trust it. And you, sir, were the face of that fear. Beck blinked. But said nothing. Because what could he say? The robe was gone. The shield was broken. And the world had seen him for what he was. The commission voted. Unanimous. Judge Ronald Beck was officially disbarred, stripped of all legal authority, and barred from holding any public office again. Forever. He didn't look surprised. But the silence that followed said it all. A gavel struck the desk in front. Irony. Poetic justice. He once used that sound to decide the fate of others. Now it sealed his own. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed. But this time, they weren't pointed at the man in disgrace. They were pointed at Marcus. No hoodie. No handcuffs. Just a simple black suit. And a future no longer defined by someone else's verdict. A reporter called out. Marcus, how does it feel? He paused. Looked back at the courthouse steps. Then answered quietly. Fair. It finally feels fair. Later that night, he walked into his old high school. A surprise visit. One of the teachers saw him in the hallway and smiled. You came back. Marcus nodded. Had to. He stepped into the library, where a group of seniors sat in a circle, part of the school's new Know Your Rights workshop. He sat down beside them. Not as a guest. As one of them. He listened. He spoke. He told them what it felt like to stand up in front of power and not blink. One student raised her hand. Were you scared? He didn't lie. Yeah, he said. But fear is not the enemy. Silence is. She nodded slowly. Then whispered, I want to be like that one day. He smiled. You already are. Weeks passed. Then months. The city began to change. New judges. New policies. A review of over 400 cases that Beck had handled. Some were overturned. Some reopened. But all were finally seen. As for Marcus, he got accepted into 3 law schools. But he chose one close to home. Because he didn't want to run from the system. He wanted to rebuild it. On his first day of orientation, he stood outside the school's glass doors and stared at the reflection. No hoodie. No fear. Just a voice. One that couldn't be silenced anymore. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded paper, worn from use, but still intact. It was the transcript from that courtroom hearing. He kept it with him. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A student walked by and smiled. You ready? Marcus looked up. And answered with a calm, steady voice. I've been ready.